Today, we are diving into a story that has sent shockwaves through Kyiv, Brussels, and Moscow: the revelation of a secret, U.S. drafted framework to end the war in Ukraine. Reports from Reuters and other major news outlets suggest that the United States has signaled to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy that Kyiv must accept a plan that involves deeply controversial concessions, namely, giving up territory and agreeing to a reduction in its armed forces. This isn't just a proposal for a ceasefire, it's a blueprint for a new European security architecture, one that comes with a steep price tag for Ukraine. We will break down the core of this 28-point plan, analyze the profound impact it would have on Ukraine and its European allies, and explore the strategic benefits the U.S. hopes to gain from this dramatic pivot in foreign policy. The stakes could not be higher. The details of this plan, while still emerging, paint a clear picture of a major shift in the U.S. approach to the conflict. This is not a Ukrainian-led peace initiative. It is a U.S.-drafted framework, reportedly hammered out in secret discussions between U.S. and Russian officials. At its heart, the plan is said to be a comprehensive 28-point proposal structured around four main pillars: peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, security in Europe, and future U.S. relations. The most contentious elements fall under that first pillar, peace in Ukraine. The proposal reportedly requires Kyiv to cede the remainder of the eastern Donbas region, including territory currently under Ukrainian control, to Russia. Furthermore, it calls for a reduction in the size of Ukraine's armed forces, effectively limiting its future military capacity. These demands are a direct challenge to Ukraine's core war aims and its constitutional integrity. Ukraine has consistently maintained that any peace deal must be based on the restoration of its 1991 borders. To accept this framework would mean formalizing the loss of sovereign territory, a move that would be politically devastating for President Zelenskyy. The U.S. rationale, according to sources, is rooted in a desire to stabilize the conflict and prevent a prolonged, costly stalemate. By forcing a resolution, the U.S. aims to draw a line under the war, even if that line is drawn in Ukrainian soil. This is a pragmatic, realpolitik approach that prioritizes a swift end to the fighting over the principle of territorial integrity. But what does this mean for the country at the center of the storm? For Ukraine, this proposal is a classic, agonizing dilemma: peace now or justice later. The immediate benefit is undeniable: an end to the daily bombardment, the saving of countless lives, and the chance to begin the monumental task of reconstruction. After nearly 4 years of brutal war, the prospect of peace is a powerful lure. However, the cost is immense. Ceding territory is not just a political defeat, it's a permanent loss of land, resources, and people. The Donbas region, which is reportedly part of the concession, is rich in mineral resources like coal and iron ore. More importantly, it means abandoning Ukrainian citizens who have remained loyal to Kyiv under occupation. The constitutional crisis this would trigger cannot be overstated. Ukraine's constitution explicitly forbids the ceding of national territory. President Zelenskyy would face an immediate and ferocious backlash from his military, his political opposition, and a significant portion of the Ukrainian public. His political survival would be at stake, and the nation could be plunged into internal turmoil even as the external war ends. The second concession, reducing the size of its armed forces, is equally fraught with risk. While the plan includes security guarantees, the nature of these guarantees is everything. If they are merely political assurances without the binding, collective defense clause of NATO's Article 5, Ukraine could find itself militarily weakened and permanently vulnerable to future Russian aggression. The memory of the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, where Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal in exchange for security assurances that proved worthless in 2014, looms large over this discussion. On the other hand, some reports suggest the plan would leave approximately 80% of Ukraine independent and free to pursue its goal of European Union membership. For a nation desperate to anchor itself to the West, this could be the ultimate trade-off: sacrificing land for a guaranteed future in the European political and economic sphere. It is a bitter pill, but one that the U.S. is clearly pressuring Kyiv to swallow. The reaction from Europe to this secret U.S. Russia framework is one of deep anxiety and concern. For many European capitals, the primary fear is that this deal sets a dangerous precedent of appeasement. If Russia is allowed to keep the territory it has seized through aggression, it sends a clear message to Moscow and to other potential aggressors that territorial conquest can be legitimized through force. This is a fundamental challenge to the post-World War II principle of inviolable borders, which is the bedrock of European security. Nations on NATO's eastern flank, particularly Poland, the Baltic states, and Romania, view this as a direct threat to their own long-term security. The second major concern is the strain on the transatlantic alliance. The fact that the U.S. and Russia were reportedly working on this plan in secret, bypassing Kiev and potentially pressuring a key ally, has raised serious questions about the reliability of the U.S. commitment to its European partners. If the U.S. is willing to unilaterally dictate terms that compromise a partner's sovereignty, it undermines the trust that binds NATO together. Furthermore, the plan's focus on wider European security is viewed with skepticism. European leaders worry that the U.S. is attempting to offload the primary security burden for Ukraine and Eastern Europe onto the European Union and NATO's European members. If the U.S. rolls back its military assistance, Europe will be forced to rapidly increase its defense spending and military production to fill the gap, a costly and complex undertaking. However, a cessation of the war would bring significant economic relief to Europe. The war has fueled inflation, disrupted supply chains, and driven up energy costs. A stable peace would allow for the normalization of trade and energy markets, providing a much-needed boost to struggling European economies. The question for Europe is whether this economic relief is worth the long-term security risk of legitimizing Russian aggression. So, what is the strategic benefit for the United States in pushing for a deal that is so controversial for its allies? The American calculus is driven by a desire for strategic reprioritization and a reduction of financial commitment. First and foremost, ending the war in Ukraine allows the U.S. to shift its focus and resources to what many in Washington view as the primary geopolitical challenge of the 21st century, China. By drawing a line under the European conflict, the U.S. can reallocate military assets, intelligence resources, and diplomatic energy to the Indo-Pacific region. Second, the plan offers a clear path to reducing the massive financial and military aid packages currently flowing to Ukraine. The war has been a significant drain on the U.S. budget and military stockpiles. A peace deal, even an imperfect one, allows the administration to claim a major political victory by ending the spending and fulfilling a promise to focus on domestic issues. Third, the plan is a clear attempt to reset U.S. Russia relations. While this is a high-risk gamble, the hope is that a stable, negotiated settlement could open the door for cooperation on other global issues such as arms control or counterterrorism. It is a move that aims to de-escalate a major conflict and reduce the risk of a direct confrontation between nuclear powers. In essence, the U.S. is trading a commitment to the principle of Ukrainian territorial integrity for a more favorable strategic position globally. It is a decision that is pragmatic, politically motivated, and deeply consequential for the future of the liberal international order. The U.S. drafted peace framework for Ukraine is a moment of truth for all parties involved. For Ukraine, it is a choice between a painful peace and a prolonged war. For Europe, it is a test of its collective security resolve and the strength of its alliance with the United States. And for the U.S., it is a demonstration of a foreign policy that is shifting its gaze eastward, prioritizing strategic advantage over the defense of a partner's borders. The coming days will be critical as President Zelenskyy weighs the domestic and international fallout of accepting this bitter deal. The terms, ceding land and reducing military strength, are a profound sacrifice, but the promise of peace and a path to the European Union may be the only lifeline left. We will continue to follow this story closely on Global Crossroads.